guy who had one term in office, who barely did anything, barely showed up to work, and he got contracts for his firm right after that whole thing that happened around COVID.
Yeah,
and
ventilators.
Yeah, that's right. And he looks at that and says, "Yep, that's the resume for a possible prime minister right there." Oh yeah, like give me a break. Okay. But there's going to be people who are going to come out of the woodwork like that. All this is to say is that this is going to be the speculation until the day it happens. And I think for most of us, we'll be more surprised.
You think it's going to happen? You think he's going to take a walk in the snow or whatever the case may be?
Absolutely. I will be more surprised if he turns up to the first federal leaders debate in the next election than if he doesn't.
Okay. All right. Well, I mean, speaking of party leaders, let's talk about O'Toole because it's interesting to talk about leadership and the Liberals for a change. Lately, it's been leadership and the Conservatives. But does having the House back help O'Toole and the Conservatives focus to unite around a common enemy? Thy name is Trudeau. What do you think, Ashton?
Yeah, well, honestly, the House couldn't have come back soon enough for Aaron O'Toole and his closest advisors. Every day he's not in the House is every day he's out of sight, out of mind, and the only thing that's making the media are the people that are out to get him. So for him, getting snippets on the news, getting that chance to go toe-to-toe with the Prime Minister in the House of Commons is going to do probably wonders for his own personal mental health, but hopefully for his poll numbers as well. Big thing that you got to look at. So, Senator Batters, she fired the opening shot.
Yeah.
I hate to say it, I think there's going to be some more shots. And I think those are going to go sort of drip, drip, drip over time. Whether or not he can get through it, I think is going to wholly depend on his poll numbers. Right now, they're sinking through the floor. He's got to right that ship. If he doesn't, caucus will sense weakness, and it will be the ball game for Mr. O'Toole.
Oh, really? Okay. All right. What do you think, Cam? Has the leadership rebellion been sidelined for now? With the House?
Oh, heck no. The leadership rebellion always lives on.
All right.
It never stops. And I agree with Ashton. I think there will be more drips because I think there's some people in that caucus who, frankly, are on a different page. Their reason for being there is different than the majority of that caucus. I think the difference is that the majority of the caucus seems to be telling him to sit down and be quiet. So I think that is maybe the one thing that can comfort Aaron O'Toole with this. And every vote that he can get in the House where he has more and more of his caucus members on side is going to help. But on the other hand, the fact is he's going to have to face the media every day. And you saw it yesterday in the scrum that he did after the throne speech. It wasn't it wasn't his worst moment as leader, but it wasn't his greatest moment either. Because he's going to have to keep facing these questions over and over and over again. And that when these votes start coming up, like, for example, one of the first bills out of the chute will be the anti-conversion therapy bill. So how many of his members are going to stand up and vote to keep conversion therapy legal and everything that comes with that? Then it's going to be how many? Was it 2 dozen, 3 dozen? Was it 5? Was it 50? It'll be, that'll always hang over his head no matter what happens.
Yeah.
So that's not going away. But you know what? At the very least, by being in the House, he has an outlet to actually go on the offensive against the government and actually expel some of that pressure that's being put down on him. Whereas when the House is sitting, he has nowhere to push it off to.
All right. I admire Mark Holland as a skilled partisan, but his comments as government House leader, my gosh, kind of over the top. Given that this party just won a minority mandate with 32% of the vote. I mean, 7 out of 10 Canadians wanted to show you the door. But now he says he's not going to, quote, tolerate obfuscation or political games, and Parliament must pass major amendments to the criminal code about conversion therapy, I suspect, is what that's about, and the labor code, that's probably sick days, in 20 days. You have 20 days to pass this, and I'm not going to tolerate any political games. He says in a minority parliament. Okay? Is this guy for real? Okay? Wasn't it the Liberals that took Parliament at a commission for, let me see, 5 months? Ashton Arsenault, what do you think about that, Ashton? It's too much, man. It's too much.
A very small love letter to somebody of Mark Holland's ilk. He is a political hatchet man. He was sent there to do a job. He is as partisan as it gets, and I don't even say this to be derogatory, but he is a PMO lapdog. So they obviously realized that their ability to pass legislation in the last parliament was not only abysmal, but cosmically bad. So somebody like Mark Holland, who's going to be able to whip the troops into shape and focus government priorities, is probably what they need. Will he make any friends in the process? Absolutely not. It's like arguing with a brick outside of your house. You'd have better luck just throwing the brick in the trash. But unfortunately, Mark Holland will probably be in this role for the foreseeable future, and I can see exactly why the Prime Minister put him in this type of situation. This is the exact type of character you want fighting battles for you day in, day out.
Okay. Cam, agree? Cam?
Yeah, for the most part. I don't agree with the harshness of the language, to be honest. You don't get into a role as government House Leader without having the full confidence of the Prime Minister, and being that closely aligned. You don't put the rebel in charge of that because you want to make sure what you want to get done is gotten done. I will note, though, that for so long. And you saw with Pablo Rodriguez in the last House, at some point you need to soften that up and bring a little bit of sugar in with, your salt, and actually try to make things a little sweeter, get along with the other side. I noticed you noticed the difference yesterday in Jagmeet Singh's tone in the about not want to be taken for granted. And maybe that's a response to getting this kind of tone from the government, saying it's our way or the highway. The fact is that those two bills that you mentioned, they're going to get passed. The agreement's there. Heck, if the election hadn't been called, the anti-conversion therapy bill probably would have been out of the Senate before Thanksgiving this year. Yeah. And you know what? If they were in such a rush, they did have 2 months of sitting on their hands with their thumbs up.
Well, this is it. This is it. We haven't been here for half the year, and now you have 20 days to get everything done. Give me a break.
The kicker is, too, in order to do it, right, you have to do some simple things.
This program is brought to you by Ignite TV. Now you're in command. Visit Rogers.com for more details.
Call the Rogers TV viewer response line. Email us or connect with us on social media.
Join us on Wednesday's daytime as we put the focus on the Ottawa Board of Trade's hashtag Buy Local Ottawa campaign. President Su-Ling Ching will join us to tell us about the initiative. And speaking of initiatives, one of the best local brewers, Kitchissippi Beer, joins us on the show. Paul Meek is going to tell us about the launch of their new business and how they are helping other local businesses here in the area.
When an impaired driver killed my brother DJ, my life changed forever. Life has changed for all of us during the pandemic, and many people are turning to alcohol and drugs to cope. Even though most of us are staying home more, police across Ontario are seeing an alarming increase in impaired driving and the horrible devastation that goes with it. Now, more than ever, we need your commitment to never drive impaired and to encourage all of your family and friends to do the same. Together, we can save lives.
This is Rogers TV, Ottawa.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Bonjour, mesdames et messieurs. Bienvenue à le Conseil municipal pour la Ville d'Ottawa pour le 24 novembre 2021. Welcome to Ottawa City Council for Agenda 66. Wednesday, November 24th, 2021, by electronic participation. This meeting will be held through electronic participation in accordance with Section 238 of the Municipal Act, 2001, as amended by the COVID-19 Economic Recovery Act. For those who are able to, please rise for a moment of personal reflection. Thank you. Merci. I'll call on our city manager, who has a special announcement to make, Mr. Kanellakis.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This morning, I put a formal announcement out, but I want to take a moment this morning to say a few words about our new General Manager of Emergency and Protective Services, Kim Ayotte. As all of Council knows, he's been acting in the role of General Manager of the department since May of this year, and he's done a fantastic job. And in the last 20 months, we've experienced probably the most challenging 20 months our organization has ever experienced, the global pandemic. And I can tell you that Kim's extensive experience has been critical in guiding our response from day one. We conducted a very comprehensive national search for this position. In fact, it was international. And Kim was the outstanding candidate. He was the successful person, hands down, over the competition that competed. He has more than 32 years of professional emergency services experience, and he's been with the Ottawa Fire Services since 2003. He served as deputy chief of several portfolios, and he was also the fire chief before assuming this latest position. He started his career with the city in 2003, and he's played an important role in so many areas in our fire service in our city. I've known Kim for quite some time, and I've seen him grow as a leader, and I really admire the way he leads and manages his people. He truly is a servant leader. He demonstrates true passion for the field of work. He has demonstrated a real commitment to the leadership traits we want to see in our organization, and he's a great role model to our staff. I'm confident that Kim's career background, exceptional qualifications, and strong leadership skills will position him well to lead the Emergency and Protective Services Department as we move forward. I'm thrilled to have him as part of our senior leadership team, and I look forward to seeing the department's progress and accomplishments under his leadership. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Great, thank you, and congratulations, Mr. Ayotte. I look forward to working with you. Félicitations. Do you want to say a few words, Kim?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you, City Manager Kanellakis. It's my honor and privilege to be able to continue to serve the city and the citizens of Ottawa in this capacity. That's all I have to say, and I look forward to working with each and every councillor. Thank you.
Great, thank you. A roll call, please, Madam Clerk.
Councillor Luloff. Councillor Dudas. Councillor Harder. Here. Councillor Curry. Here. Councillor El-Shantiri. Councillor Gower.
EC.
Councillor Kavanagh. Here. Councillor Shirelli.
Here.
Councillor Eglag.
Here.
Councillor Deans.
Here.
Councillor Tierney.
Present.
Conseiller Fleury.
Bonjour.
Councillor King.
Here.
Councillor McKenney.
Present.
Councillor Leeper. Councillor Brockington.
Here.
Councillor Menard.
Here.
Conseiller Cloutier. Councillor Kitts.
Here.
Councillor DeRoos.
Here.
Councillor Moffat.
Here.
Councillor Meehan.
Good morning.
Councillor Hubley.
Here.
Mayor Watson.
You see?
You have a quorum, Mr. Mayor.
Great, thank you. And a formal welcome to our newest member of council, Councillor Cathy Curry, who is representing the wonderful ward of Canada North, the home to Canada's largest high-tech park, and we welcome you Councillor Curry, a little different from our last meeting when we were posing questions to you. Now you get to pose the questions. So, bienvenue, and look forward to working with you.
Thank you.
Confirmation of minutes, adoption de procès-verbaux for the special meeting on November 3rd, and the regular meeting on November 10th, and the special meeting on November 10th. Carried, adopté. Déclaration de conflit d'intérêt, declaration of conflicts of interest. Regrets, no regrets filed to date. Motion to introduce reports. Motion portant présentation de rapport. Conseiller Kavanagh et conseiller Cloutier, s'il vous plaît.
Merci. Que le rapport rapporté du
at the deferred report from Planning Committee entitled Official Plan and Zoning Amendments 1 and 19, Sir John A. Macdonald Parkway, Standing Committee on Environmental Protection, Water and Wastewater Report 20, Planning Committee Report 52A, the report from the Integrity Commissioner entitled Integrity Commissioner 2021 Annual Report, and reports from the entitled Summary of Oral and Written Public Submissions for items subject to the Planning Act explanation requirements. The City Council meeting of November 10, 2021, and status update, Council inquiries and decisions for the period ending November 19, 2021, be received and considered.
Adopté, carried. Postponements and deferrals, rapport et renvoi. Councillor Tierney, seconded by Councillor Kitts, has a deferral. Councillor Tierney, if you'd like to introduce the deferral motion, please.
Great. I guess we're just waiting for that.
Yeah, it's on the slide right now.
Yeah, great. Let it be it resolved that the City Council be deferred to the City Council meeting of February 9th, 2022.
Okay. Does anyone wish to discuss this? We'll come back to it. Otherwise, we can pass the deferral motion. Councillor Leeper, this is your ward. You're okay with the deferral?
To support it.
I'm sorry?
Thank you.
Okay. So on deferral, carried. Adopté. Merci. Thank you. Next, reports. Integrity Commissioner, Commissaire à l'Intégrité, the Integrity Commissioner's 2021 Annual Report. Our Integrity Commissioner is with us. If we can bring her up on the screen. Does anyone have any questions for the Integrity Commissioner on her first report? We welcome Karen Shepherd. I'm trying to see where Karen is on the screen. Okay, so welcome, Commissioner. And does anyone on council? Councillor Fleury has a question for you.
Mr. Mayor, not a question, just perhaps it's probably the first time that the public and members of council might have met with Karen individually, but I wonder if we could give her some time just to properly introduce and also share with us some of her work. The report's pretty clear on the review, but just in the spirit of the role of the IC, I think we should give some time for Kathy to properly introduce herself.
Yeah, she chose not to do a presentation, but would you like to say anything, Commissioner?
Hi, hello, bonjour. It's a pleasure to be serving the city as the second Integrity Commissioner. I have met with all of the councillors, so it's a pleasure to do that, and I look forward to working with you in the future to continue on that role. And you know, as my report indicates, I see education as a big tool going forward. So, you know, part of the thing looking into the future now would be looking on the lobby side, like looking more outwards. I've spent a lot of time in the few months inwards and working on governance review. So thank thank you. It's a pleasure to be here serving the city.
Est-ce qu'il y a des questions, des commentaires? Any questions? No. Well, thank you very much, Commissioner Shepherd. And on the report recommendation received? Received. Thank you. Office of the City Clerk, Bureau du Greffier Municipal, status update, council inquiries and motions for the period ending November 19th. Rapport de situation, demande et renseignements en motion du Conseil pour la période se terminer le 19 novembre 2021. Received? Received. Next is committee reports, rapport du comité, Standing Committee on Environmental Protection, Water and Waste Management, report 20, rapport numéro 20 du comité de permanent de la protection de l'environnement. Item 4, local improvement policy review and update of ditch alteration policy. On ditches. Carried?
Carried.
Planning Committee report 52A, rapport numéro 52A du comité de l'urbanisme, modification de règlement de zonage 20 chemin Walkley et 2935
Zoning bylaw amendment 2020 Walkley Road and 2935 Conroy.
Next, the bulk consent agenda. Does anyone wish to remove anything from the bulk consent agenda? On the bulk consent agenda as presented. Carried. Sorry, was that a dissent? No, okay. So we'll go back to the item on Walkley Road. Councillor Deans, you asked that this be held. The floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. Good morning, colleagues. I held this item to ask each and every one of you to vote against this zoning bylaw amendment. On November 8th, the Planning Committee voted to approve the zoning amendment, and I'm here this morning to ask you to reconsider that recommendation from the Planning Committee. 30 years ago, the City of Ottawa actually initiated a zoning change to remove warehousing from that corner. Warehousing was not appropriate then. Warehousing is not appropriate now. The Planning Committee received 32 written submissions from members of the community. And I can tell you since then, 35 residents have written directly to members of council, all to voice their concerns about this application. I want to tell you what their concerns are. The primary one is traffic. Conroy Road is a busy road and suffers from congestion, particularly at peak periods. Residents are worried that this development will only lead to greater traffic congestion and that increases in traffic volume could result in more drivers cutting through their local roads. The safety of pedestrians and cyclists should be paramount. Conroy Road is a route that many cyclists use to commute from Hunt Club Park, South Keys, Greenboro, and further south, Blossom Park, Finley Creek, Greeley, all of those communities. Heavy trucks along Conroy Road introduce more opportunities for conflicts between trucks and vulnerable road users. I also heard from residents who have concerns for the safety of cyclists and pedestrians along this road, and in particular at the Conroy and Walkley intersection. And I worry that allowing this development would only make this intersection less safe. Why would we be approving an application that could make it less safe for cyclists and pedestrians at a time when we are trying to encourage active transportation? If you've been to the Ottawa Business Park, you are likely aware that it is one of Ottawa's premier business parks. The site in question sits at the corner of the business park, and my community does not believe that warehouses belong at the entrance of this premier business park. Our city is in the process of developing new policies to guide future growth. We've seen an increasing demand for land to accommodate warehousing and distribution during the COVID-19 pandemic, and it seems likely that this demand will remain strong over the coming years. We need a strategy around warehousing and distribution centers to make sure that we're placing them in the right locations. In the new official plan, the South Ottawa Business Park is separated into mixed industrial areas and industrial and logistics areas. My understanding is that while warehousing is permitted in both urban designations, the industrial and logistics designation is the best land use to accommodate anticipated future growth of warehousing and distribution in the context of this area. That would mean that the Hawthorne, Stevenage Business Park and the vacant NCC lands would be better locations than these lands on the corner of this prestigious business park. These lands have bigger lots. They have better proximity to the 400 series highways. These areas are also better separated from residential areas, and this is where we should be encouraging warehousing and distribution. The applicant hasn't disclosed what kind of warehouse will be added to this location, so how can we be sure that it won't cause conflicts with others using the neighboring business park? Finally, let me remind you that these lands are not currently zoned for warehousing. We do not need to approve this zoning bylaw amendment. I firmly believe this is not the best place for warehousing in the South Ottawa Business Park. And most importantly, the community that I represent doesn't believe that either. So I ask each and every one of you to really consider opposing this application. Thank you.
Councillor Gower, please.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you, Councillor Deans. I went back to my notes from Planning Committee because Planning did vote to recommend.
While we wait, you may be interested to know that in the municipal election in 1920, City of Ottawa residents voted whether or not they wanted to accept daylight savings time as something they wanted to embrace. 65% of Ottawa residents voted in favor of daylight savings time. So there's that.
That is very interesting.
In what does that align with Jeremy Roberts?
In what year, Scott?
1920.
1920, 100 years ago.
That must have been when Glenn Brooks was here.
He moved the motion.
I'm advised that sound has been returned to our YouTube channel, and those watching may need to refresh their page, but we are back live, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, so Councillor Gower, we're not sure when exactly the sound went off, so we may want to start at the beginning.
Okay, take two.
Clock for 5 minutes.
All right, take two. So this is a summary of some of my notes and what we heard at Planning Committee. Planning Committee did recommend to Council approval of the additional warehouse use. If you look at what's currently allowed on the site, it is a light industrial zone, and there's a broad range of uses, probably about 2 or 3 dozen permitted uses. To give you an idea of what those are, permitted currently in the zoning: a bank, an office, a parking garage, a printing plant, an athletic facility, a takeout restaurant, a retail food store, a service and repair shop. Quite a variety of different uses. All of them would generate traffic. Any new development here would generate additional traffic. Some of them would generate additional car traffic, private vehicle traffic. Some of them would generate additional truck traffic, but any new construction here would generate traffic. So when we're looking at what is a change of use, how do we assess what the impact of that new use would be? Light industrial is permitted here. In general, these uses permit manufacturing, processing, and assembly. By adding warehouse, we'd be adding storage and distribution of goods and equipment as a permitted use. Warehousing is considered in our zoning as a light industrial use. It's not considered a heavy industrial use because it has a much smaller impact than a heavy industrial use. This is not on the scale of a large Amazon type logistics warehouse. We're talking about 3 separate warehouses with a total of 32 loading docks, and they're capped at 10,000 square meters each. So while it's true we don't know exactly what the use or what the business would be in here, staff has worked to add some size caps to give certainty as to the type of buildings and the type of use that this would be. And ultimately the impact is it would have less vehicular traffic, less cars than many of the uses, for example, a takeout restaurant. However, it would have some more trucks. But at the highest peak hour, it would have 5 to 8 additional trucks than in the other uses. So there is an impact, there is an increase, but I think 5 to 8 trucks over the high peak hour during the day is a minimal increase. And on the issue of prestige business park, I understand that, although I think it's less about what the use is. You know, I struggle to see how a takeout restaurant would automatically create that prestige gateway that was intended here. I think it's more about the architecture and the design of the site and the layout of the site than on what the actual use is that determines what makes a prestige or gateway site. So I encourage council to support the recommendations from Planning Committee and support this additional warehouse use on the site. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Curry, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I felt that I should say something about this, given how new I am, and I thought whatever I say here today may help people understand the way I will look at things. So, first of all, I thought, okay, what does Canada North have to say about this? Well, Canada North has nothing to say about this. And then I looked at what the community said to the Planning Committee, because that's where the community can voice its concerns. So the community spoke to the Planning Committee, and the Planning Committee spent a lot of time listening and then recommended it. And it matters to me what committees do, because your governance model is that your committees recommend to council. So Planning Committee voted in favor of it, and obviously planning staff recommended it. And that's another important voice for me to hear. So I didn't stop there on this issue. I met with planners and saw architect's rendition of the building, which was quite beautiful. And if the goal is to have a gateway, certainly the building looks the main building on the corner looks quite lovely, but the other corner is like a strip mall kind of Tim Hortons thing. So I'm not sure that the concept of a gateway would happen anyways. I appreciate Councillor Councillor Gower's comments on the things that the planning committee considered. But I will say that in Canada, what happens, although Canada didn't say anything to me about this, they are concerned about the traffic. And the traffic in this instance, I understand, would be 8 trucks per hour. So basically 8 trucks one truck every 8 minutes. So that to me doesn't seem like you think about how long an hour is, 8 trucks, that doesn't seem to be a lot of traffic, in addition to Councillor Gower's comments. The reality is the business park in Canada and the area on Ivor Road, they're not the canal in Chicago. We don't have the architecture that is stunning. If you drive through the Canada Tech Park, you see all kinds of buildings. Some are brown, some are gray, some are glassy, some are not. I'm not sure that people are aware whether they're warehouses or they're office buildings or a combination of both. But certainly the building that I looked at in the meeting I attended looked lovely. But I will say that I would support what the planning committee said and what planning staff are recommending as well. And that's generally how I look at things. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor. Councillor Brockington, please.
Thank you, Mayor. Good morning to you and colleagues. Can I just start off by asking planning staff, I believe a motion was recently passed following our debate with the warehouse issue in Gloucester, South Nepean, Councillor Meehan's ward. Can I just be reminded what that motion or direction consisted of with respect to warehouses?
Mr. Mayor, I'm going to answer that specific question, but Ms. Chi will answer further questions on the planning application. Council passed a motion that we would do a review of the zoning parameters for large format warehouses, and it's consistent with the direction of the new official plan. I caution council has to assess an application against the rules on the day the applicant filed their application, and those rules are not in effect yet, nor is the new official plan. So the new official plan and that study are not a consideration for this file under the terms of the Planning Act.
I was going to say the intent or the will of council is to review that, but you're saying because this application had been in the queue already, our obligation is to make a decision on this particular application now.
That's, Mr. Mayor, that the council is correct.
Okay, so I attended the planning committee and I heard staff say a number of things. One thing in favor of the application is the fact that this property is located at the junction of 2 arterial roads and in staff's words had reasonable access to the 417, the Queensway, although it's technically not close to the Queensway. It is a direct road, Walkley Road to the Queensway. So I can understand that side of the argument, but certainly the pushback that we've heard with this application is the impact, both proposed impacts on the community. And so to staff directly, how does that get assessed in staff's decision making? Is it completely out of scope, or is it actually considered in your decision making process?
Thank you, Councillor. Of course, community input is very important when we review an application that comes that's before us. In this case, as you had noted, this is right at the corner of 2 arterial roads, which can take truck traffic and then lead them quickly to the highway. So in terms of overall impact to the community, I think it is not that serious as according to our assessment, and the issue of safety for pedestrians along Conroy, that has been addressed with the developer, with the applicant, and that the access would be limited to right in, right out on Conroy, and that there would be some markings at the crossings to the green thermoplastic markings to highlight that the cyclists will go through here. And we also have a sidewalk on that side of the road.
Yeah, I think this is the crux of the matter for the comments I've read and listened to from residents of the immediate community is safety issues with respect to the quantity of trucks that will now be entering the community. And yes, Councillor Gower's right, other uses could generate different volumes, but we're focusing on the application before us today. And so you know, this is sort of a repeat concern that we hear across the city in multiple wards, is that applications will introduce a new type and quantity of traffic that some neighborhoods are not prepped to receive, safely receive. And so, yes, this is arterial roads. It has to come through communities to get to this location. And I think that's the crux of the matter. So both local councillors oppose this. I do think this council needs to listen to the local voice. And that's why at committee, I was not supportive of the application. So thank you.
Thank you, Councillor McKenney.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I did want to speak to this. I think back to 900 Albert, which is in Somerset Ward, corner of Albert and City Centre. And when we approved 3 large towers, 900 Albert, there was a lot of discussion around height, 65 stories, 55 stories. But the main point of contention with 900 Albert was not the height, was not the density. It was the fact that we were going to bring in heavy truck traffic into the site. And you could argue that, you know, Albert Street is an appropriate place to bring truck traffic. However, it's also the route to get to our new light rail transit station at Bayview. Kids and others cross there to take the train, to get to school, to get to work. It's also part of a route to get to the Trillium line and the multi-use pathway there for kids to get to Devonshire and other parts of the downtown. And they travel it with more and more frequency every year. And once that truck traffic is introduced, I know as a parent who sends their kid to school, 1 every few minutes, 8 minutes, 8 an hour is 8 more trucks than what would be there and what should be there, because it's not allowed today. And we know that every one of those thermoplast will not save them if an accident occurs with a heavy truck. Paint is not infrastructure. It might cue you that a cyclist could be there, but it is not safe infrastructure. We know that. So we've got Conroy. I know the area well. I lived there for many years back. And I actually was there not long ago. And it's changing, and that whole neighborhood to the south, coming north, is changing. There are more and more vulnerable road users, and right in and a right out for warehouse use will present an added level of risk for vulnerable road users. I thought about this, and when I responded to people who emailed me, I told them that I would consider it. I had a lot to think about. I met with the applicant, but in the end, there is no way that I could, in good conscience, accept that up to 8 trucks a day, even though, as others have pointed out, there are other uses allowed, and that could bring in traffic. Warehouse use is a very different use than takeout, than light industrial. It does introduce large, heavy trucks on a street in an area where we are, as a city, encouraging people not to take their cars when it's possible, but to cycle and to walk. And this is a growing neighborhood. We know the south of the city is growing. And if we want it to grow and we're serious about building 15-minute neighborhoods, we have to provide pedestrians and cyclists with the highest level of service. And this really will take away that safety, that level of safety that they deserve to have when they are cycling to work, getting to school, walking in their neighborhood. So I will not be supporting the zoning bylaw amendment, and I encourage others to consider, if this was in your neighborhood, and your kids were walking to school here, would 8 trucks an hour be a risk that you would impose on them every day, every hour? Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Fleury.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Questions to staff. So looking to understand, Councillor Chair Gower was raising a number of points in terms of what are commercial permitted uses at that site. What's so different with warehouses, and why was that not included in the current zoning?
If I may turn this to Ms. Shu to answer that.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and Councillor, for the question. Staff did a history research of the history of the site and the policies applied to the site. As Councillor Deans previously mentioned, the old City of Ottawa's policies and the Gloucester's policies applied to the site goes back to 30 years ago. And from 30 years ago, the city staff at that time suggested the area to the west side of Conway Road, which was owned by the city at the time, was under the vision of the business park, and the policies and the zoning were in place. This site, interestingly, at the time was recognized to be owned by a private landowner, but recognized it's at a corner. So the policy suggests it should complement the business park image. And that's why at the time the use of warehouse was not placed on the site. However, there's no actual other policies, such as the urban design guidelines, would apply to the business park that applies to this site. So this site is not subject to the urban design guidelines to the other side of the street. Still, though, when the staff reviewed the zoning and the site plan applications, staff incorporated the policies and the guidelines to the site in terms of how they design the landscaping at the corner and street elevations to the best ability to complement the adjacent uses across the street and to our best ability. That's why we feel that that objective will be achieved.
Yeah, it's quite residential in that area. I know it well as well. I used to train at that Good Life when I was in high school. So Conroy and Walkley. I want to understand, could you give me examples of what warehouse means? Like, to me, there's a range of warehouses. There's the Amazon, a large, big, very, very busy spot. There's the Diamond spaces, which I know Councillor Aguilar on Maryville had recent issues, and there's kind of the industrial street with the Metro grocer segment. So can you give me a bit more of like, what does warehouse use mean from what is being sought?
Mr. Mayor and Councillor, so in general, a warehouse means space used for storage and distribution of goods. The current market had a range of intensity in terms of trucks that will be associated with the warehouse. I think for this case, this is a typical normal warehouse in terms of the amount of the truck loading space associated with it. We have seen in other areas and the sites where there'll be more intensive loading space. But this one, it's a fairly average or below average in terms of the truck loading space associated with the floor space.
Do we know the use? Do you know, is it food storage? Is it furniture storage? Do we know those details?
No, we don't.
Okay. Final question for me, Mr. Mayor, is maybe relating to truck routes. So I know that during the recent OP discussions, we referred a lot of motions regarding future truck routes through the TMP, which are appropriate. What are the truck routes in this area? There's pretty clear connection to the 417 at Hun Club, which is a more recent connection. But what have we changed or looked at in acceptance of any site plan conditions of limiting movement that could impact residential spaces, residential areas of this community.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, both Conroy and Walkley can be used by trucks, and it's a truck route and leads them directly to the highway. And this site is right at the corner of Conroy and Walkley, so it's not, there aren't residential units around the site on Conroy. As for your other question was, did we work with the developer? I think that's what you were saying, if we had modifications. Yes, and perhaps Ms. Sue can provide more details, but just a reminder that this is, the site is, it's proposed it's 3 one-story buildings. So we've limited the height of the building. It's light warehousing of about 10,000 square meters per building. So it's not the large warehouses that Planning Committee and Council have had to deal with recently. So with that, I'll turn it over to Lily.
Yeah, thank you, Vivi. So as Vivi mentioned, the staff worked with the applicant to look to the access along Conroy Road. And also fine detail to confirm is the peak truck numbers in the morning and afternoon peak hours will be 5 and 8 respectively. So that will be the busiest hour. That is different from every hour you will have 8 trucks. It will be much less than that. The adjustment of the overall truck route network, it has to be looked at a higher level, at a bigger scope, which is beyond the review of this specific site.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Meehan, please.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor, and good morning, colleagues. I wasn't going to speak on this particular warehouse issue because I've dealt with my own warehouse issue in Barrhaven East unsuccessfully, as it appears Councillor Cloutier and Councillor Deans will also face similar defeat here today. But I just wanted to say I'm totally discouraged between the disconnect between the zoning and the concern and planning staff, quite frankly, zoning, planning staff, and the needs of a community and the concerns of the area councillor. I don't know why we even bother discussing it. If it's zoned, rubber stamp it, okay? Because there's no residents to come out. There's no need for councillors to battle these projects, because obviously they don't know anything. It's zoned that way, just permit it, okay? I lost the warehouse issue in Barrhaven East, despite the fact that we had a petition with 4,000 residents. We had people come out and say, these roads, Maribel, Strandherd, Woodruff, Prince of Wales, are already busy, okay? But we're going to put a warehouse in with 450 transport trucks anyway, 24 hours a day. Good for the economy, sure it is, but it's not good for anything else, okay? So I've asked that for modifications for the roads, for Maryville, for those trucks to get onto Prince of Wales. So I'm told, I get a memo back from planning staff, and this is nothing against planning staff, but they are going to monitor that right now the roads are within acceptable volumes. That's without these transport trucks, okay? So they're going to measure. They don't feel that any modifications or any widenings are going to be necessary for many years down the road. So what's going to happen? That warehouse is going to be built. The trucks are going to go in with those intersections, those roads just the way they are now, which is really, if you go and visit, and I challenge some of my colleagues on planning to go and visit the areas where you're making decisions, okay? Go and visit them and see what's going to happen. The warehouse is going to go in. Those trucks are going to be in and out onto Maryville, Prince of Wales, Strandherd, Woodruff, without the modifications that are required. This is the reason that we end up in some of the situations that we do in this city. We're too much traffic with people who are concerned that, they can't get around and they don't want to walk. Getting across Prince of Wales, you take your life in your hands. Same with Maryville Road. If we're going to continue to approve warehouses and trucks in areas, we got to put the modifications and the the widenings in before so that the residents in the area are not more inconvenienced. We're going to ignore their concerns. So at least what we can do is do something for them in the interim. Make those intersections wider so that they can accommodate those trucks. Like it's like compounding a problem for people who live in these areas. Maybe they don't have as many residential areas in the Conroy Road, Walkley area as I do, but it's a busy, busy area now. And we continue to cause problems for all of us. And, yes, we're going to review these routes in the transportation master plan, but that's still years away. So welcome to Ottawa, folks. Am I discouraged? Yeah, I am. Anyway, thank you.
Councillor Moffat.
Thanks. I think my colleague in Barhaven Riverside South actually paints a good picture of this area compared to Bill Latham. What we're talking about here is a building that's actually no larger than 90,000 square feet. This is not a 1 million square foot warehouse. This is not a building with 100 plus truck bays. Conroy Road is not Maryville. Walkley is not Prince of Wales. This is a far more capable area of accommodating warehousing uses. In fact, the warehousing uses are already in the area. Between Don Reed, Thurston, and Saint Laurent, there's over 60 buildings that are already within this industrial business park. The building size, like I said, the largest building that can be built here based on the zoning, or what we're seeing, what the application is looking for, is 90,000 square feet. The Dulco printing building back on Saint Laurent is 112,000 square feet with multiple truck bays. A printing company is actually a permitted use as it stands today on this property without a rezoning. So that Dulco company that's back over on Saint Laurent could actually be built on this corner, on this property, 112,000 square feet with multiple truck bays. The Diamond Self-Storage building just down the road is 92,000 square feet. So it gives you a perspective of what the size of the building we're talking about. I mean, it's not, this isn't, like I said, this isn't Bill Latham. This isn't that application. This isn't the Amazon building off of Boundary Road, or it's not the North Core application, which is 700,000 square feet, 22 meters tall. So I think what we have in front of us, I think we lose sight of it because we couple it with other projects that are not comparable. This is the two buildings on this site as it stands today are 60,000 square feet and 50,000 square feet. It's not that far off from what's being proposed on this site. There's two buildings now. What's being proposed is three buildings. Yes, there's going to be truck bays, but the data we've already talked about, and I know Councillor Leeper brought this up and made sure of this at the planning committee, that there's really only 5 or 6 trucks per hour. This isn't countless additional trucks in this area. And again, some of the permitted uses already permit trucking. I think it's a reality. This isn't a residential area. Across the road, yes, there's homes, but this was built as an industrial park, and that's what it is. And I think as a result, this application does fit here. It's within 3 kilometers of the 417 on Woodruff. On Walkley. It is a direct route. Thanks.
Great, thank you. Anyone else wish to speak on it? No. Okay, so yeas and nays on the staff recommendation.
Councillor Kitts.
Yes.
Councillor Harder.
Yes.
Councillor Hubley.
Yes.
Councillor Dudas.
Yes.
Conseiller Fleury.
No.
Councillor Luloff.
Yes.
Councillor Tierney.
Yes.
Councillor Moffat.
Yes.
Councillor Menard.
No.
Councillor Eglai.
No.
Councillor Curry.
Yes.
Conseiller Cloutier.
No.
Councillor King.
No.
Councillor McKinney.
No.
Councillor Brockington.
No.
Councillor Gower.
Yes.
Councillor Meehan,
No.
Councillor Deans,
No.
Councillor El Shantiri,
Yes.
Councillor Leeper,
No.
Councillor Shirelli,
Yes.
Councillor Kavanaugh,
No.
Councillor DeRuse,
Yes.
Mayor Watson,
Yes.
13 yeas, 11 nays.
Okay, thank you. Next, Councillor Kavanaugh, motion to adopt reports. Motion portant adoption d'un rapport, seconded by Councillor Cloutier.
Que le rapport numéro 20 du comité permanent de
The
la
Standing Committee on Environment Protection, Water and Wastewater Report number 20. Planning Committee number 52A. The report from the Integrity Commissioners entitled Integrity Commissioner 2021 Annual Report. And the reports from the City Clerk entitled Summary of Oral and Written Public Submissions for Items Subject to the Planning Act. Explanation requirements at the City Council meeting of October 27, 2021. And status update, Council inquiries and motion for the period ending November 19, 2021 be received and adopted as amended.
Okay, carried. Motions of which notice have been previously given, motion dont avait été donnée entièrement. The following Fleury-Thierry motion of which notice was previously given to the November 10th, 2021 council meeting has been revised pursuant to subsection 59.5 of the procedure bylaw. Councillor Fleury, if you'd like to introduce the motion, please.
Merci, Monsieur le Maire, de souligner les petits amendements.
Thank you so much. Yes, so we did a consult with Just Food. Caitlin, can you actually put the motion on the screen, please? One moment, please.
So colleagues, this is a motion about the Year of the Garden. I'll just, as it's been amended, I'll read it out. I have it here. You okay if I read it, Caitlin?
Yes, please, Councillor.
Whereas Communities in Bloom, in collaboration with the Canadian Garden Council, invites all municipalities to celebrate the Year of the Garden, and whereas Indigenous peoples and settlers have a long history of relating to stewarding and growing plants on these lands, and whereas the Year of the Garden celebrates a designated centennial of Canada's ornamental horticulture sector, and whereas gardens and gardening contributes to the quality of life of our municipality and creates safe and healthy places where people can come together, and whereas the Ottawa Community Gardening Network, coordinated by Just Food, supported by the City of Ottawa, is celebrating 25 years of community engagement and garden development in 2022. And whereas gardens and gardening have helped us face the challenges of COVID pandemic, including mitigating food insecurity and social isolation, and whereas the Year of the Garden will highlight and celebrate the important contributions of local gardening organization and horticulture professionals and businesses, and whereas the National Garden Day is June 18th, 2022, and celebrating this day in the City of Ottawa will contribute to the legacy of Canada's Year of the Garden 2022, and whereas the City of Ottawa is committed to be a garden-friendly city supporting the development of its garden culture, therefore be it resolved that Ottawa City Council proclaim 2022 as the Year of the Garden in Ottawa, in celebration of the contribution of gardens, gardening, and community gardening to improve the lives of our community members in terms of health, food security, beauty, quality of life, biodiversity, and environmental sustainability.
Okay, anyone else wish to speak to the item? On the motion, carried. Adopté?
Carried.
Next is a motion by Councillor Moffat, seconded by Councillor Gower. Councillor Moffat, please.
Thanks. We this for as noticed motion last meeting of council. You'll recall that when Councillor Gower named as co-chairs of the committee, That's the other committee I chair. The planning committee, we had split the allotted FTE between the two of us. Ultimately, I don't think it's that feasible. Councillor Gower does have a staff member that does work and help him on the planning committee agenda. That staff does help provide me with some information as well, but it's just a lot easier if the entire allotment and the individual just come directly out of one office. So the motion before us simply allocates the full FTE to Councillor Gower rather than me. I mean, I already have an allocation from Environment Committee anyway. So it's therefore be resolved until the end of 2018-2022 term of council that the full FTE credit for the Planning Committee chair be applied to Chair Gower's constituency service budget.
Great, thank you, Councillor Moffat. Any questions or debate? See any on the motion? Carried. Okay. Next is motions requiring suspension of the rules of procedure. Motion exigeant la suspension des règles de procédure par conseillère Kavanagh et Deans. The floor is yours, Councillor Kavanagh. Oh, sorry, on suspension. Carried.
Carried on suspension.
I don't get to say anything. Excuse me, can I, if I may? Thank you.
The floor is yours. Go ahead.
Thank you very much. No, I think it's important to remind everyone that the 16 days of activism is starting on November 25th and going till December 10th. This is a very important time to for women and gender equity. This is about starts women and goes to December 10th, the International Human Rights Day. In addition, it's important for us as Canadians that one of the worst examples of gender-based violence occurred on December 6th, the Montreal Massacre, which none of us will ever forget. So I invite everyone to come out and show their support because we're going to have the lighting of the building coming up. So there's an opportunity to attend. And I want to give my gratitude to the local chapter of Grandmothers Advocacy Network called GRAN, who spearheaded the campaign annually in Ottawa promoting the lighting of City Hall, which previously was orange and is now purple, out of respect for and in solidarity with missing and murdered Indigenous women and girls in Canada. Orange Shirt Day, sponsored by Every Child Matters movement. Purple has also been associated with fighting domestic violence. In addition, this color also aligns with the purple ray of light that has been beamed on Parliament Hill on December 6th, marking Canada's National Day of Remembrance and Action on Violence Against Women. So I'll just read there be it resolved that the Mayor and the Ottawa City Council declare November 25th to December 10th as 16 days of activism to end gender-based violence in the city of Ottawa. And I invite you to join me tomorrow evening at 5 o'clock at the Heritage Building.
Great, thank you very much, Councillor. Councillor Dudas.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Councillor Kavanagh, for bringing this forward, and Councillor Deans for seconding it. This is an incredibly important motion, and it speaks to a scourge in our society. I love this motion, and I am going to propose a friendly amendment, and I am doing so because I just want to ensure that it's fully inclusive, and I can see that there was a lot of thought that was taken toward the end in the wording of it. I am, however, mindful that the Office of the United Nations High Commission for Human Rights, in their definition of gender-based violence, pointedly includes sexual minorities, regardless of gender expression. And in that definition, they include GBV as the violence perpetuated against women, girls, and men and boys with diverse sexual orientation and gender identities, as well as non-binary individuals, because it's driven by a desire to punish those seen as defying gender norms. So I was wondering, I do have a sentence I was cobbling together, and I was wondering if you'd be willing to take it as a friendly amendment, as a whereas, Whereas gender-based violence is also perpetuated against women, girls, and men and boys with diverse sexual orientations and gender identities, as well as non-binary individuals at rates far exceeding the heterosexual community. And I can send that right now, if that would be friendly.
I consider that a friendly amendment. Thank you.
Great, thank you. So on the motion, Councillor Kavanagh is brought forward as amended by Councillor Dudas with a friendly amendment. Carried?
Carried.
Okay. Notice of motion for consideration at a subsequent meeting. Avis de motion pour examen à réunion subséquente. Councillor Hubley, seconded by Councillor Kavanagh, please. Councillor Hubley.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Our motion will be, whereas the former Ward 4 Canada North Councillor Jenna Sudds held the following council-appointed positions: 1, Planning Committee; 2, Transit Commission and Transit Commission representative on the Council Climate Change Sponsors Group; 3, IT Subcommittee; 4, Hydro Ottawa Holdings Board of Directors; 5, Deputy Mayor and member of the Finance and Economic Development Committee. And whereas Council declared the Ward 4 Canada North Council office to be vacant on October 13, 2021, and on November 10, 2021, Council appointed Kathy Curry as the new Ward Councillor for the remainder of the 2018 to 2022 term of Council. And whereas the mayor, as chair of the nominating committee and in consultation with the city clerk, has reviewed the above noted vacancies in the context of the expression of interest for, from the new Ward 4 Councillor Kathy Curry. And whereas Councillor Curry has expressed an interest in sitting on the committees and boards vacated by her predecessor. And whereas appointing Kathy Curry to these vacancies would allow for the opportunity for her to meaningfully participate in committee business during the last year of the term. And whereas it would be beneficial to support gender parity on key committees where possible, whereas in accordance with the procedures bylaw, the deputy mayors are recommended by mayor to council. And the mayor is recommending the 3rd deputy mayor position remain vacant, subject to a review in the new year, should the volume of community events meaningfully increase in 2022. Therefore, be it resolved that council approve the appointment of Councillor Kathy Curry as a member of the following committees and boards for the balance of the 2018 to 2022 term of council. 1, Planning Committee; 2, Transit Commission. Part A of that will be the Transit Commission representative on the Council Climate Change Sponsor Group. 3, IT Subcommittee. 4, Hydro Ottawa Holdings Inc. as Board of Directors. And finally, FEDCO as a member at large. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Cloutier, your hand is up.
Monsieur le Maire, thank you, and thank you, Councillor Hubley. Mr. Mayor, given that there's about 6 months left of committee activity before next summer, I would recommend that we waive the rules on this and allow the member of Canada North to take part in committee meetings as soon as possible. And so I would, if I could move, that the rules of procedure be suspended to consider this motion so that it could be approved as quickly as possible.
Okay, on suspension.
Hey, sorry, Mayor. Let's do yeas and nays on suspension, please.
Okay, so yeas and nays on suspension. This would allow Councillor Curry to start sitting on committees right away, as opposed to waiting, I guess, 2 weeks. So yeas and nays on suspension.
Councillor Kitts?
Yes.
Councillor Harder?
Yes.
Councillor Hubley?
Yes.
Councillor Dudas?
Yes.
Conseil Fleury?
No.
Councillor Luloff?
No.
Councillor Tierney?
Yes.
Councillor Moffat?
Yes.
Councillor Menard?
No.
Councillor Eglai?
No.
Councillor Curry?
Yes.
Conseil Cloutier?
Oui.
Councillor King?
No.
Councillor McKinney?
No.
Councillor Brockington?
Yes.
Councillor Gower?
No.
Councillor Meehan?
No.
Councillor Deans?
No.
Councillor El Shantiri?
Yes.
Councillor Leeper?
Sorry, a point of order. I had my hand up to speak to the motion to waive the rules.
Yeah, we're in the middle of the vote, Councillor.
Okay, we proceeded then to a vote without giving me the opportunity to speak. I think this was my privilege, but I will vote no.
Councillor Shirelli?
Yes.
Councillor Kavanaugh?
Yes.
Councillor DeRuse?
Yes.
Mayor Watson?
Yes.
I have 14 yeas and 10 nays.
So we needed 3/4, so unfortunately we'll have to ask Councillor Curry to continue going as a guest, I guess, to committee. So next is another notice of motion. Councillor Luloff and Gower, please.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. This is with regards to a piece of property in my ward on Rock Street. If I could have the motion placed up on the screen, please. Thank you very much. Whereas bylaw 2020-2014 was approved by council on July 15th, 2020 to rezone the lands known municipally as 6758 and 6766 Rock Street. Whereas the applicant intends to construct a stacked dwelling consisting of 2.5 stories in height and containing 6 dwelling units for the site located at 6766 Rock. And whereas prior to obtaining a building permit, the applicant would be required to seek a minor variance for a lot width reduction of approximately 3.71 meters to obtain a building permit from the minimum lot width requirement of 22 meters for a stacked dwelling to allow a reduced lot width of approximately 18.29 meters. And we can have a little scroll there, please. And whereas pursuant to the Planning Act, a minor variance is not permitted within 2 years following the approval of a zoning bylaw concerning the subject site. And whereas pursuant to section 45(1.4) of the Planning Act, council may waive the 2-year moratorium period. And whereas staff support the invocation of section 45(1.4) of the Planning Act to allow the applicant to apply for the community adjustment for a minor variance. And whereas all other provisions are applicable, zoning provision are intended to remain in compliance, including minimum yards, height, parking lot area. Therefore, be it resolved that council allow the applicant to apply for this variance.
We'll deal with that at the next meeting.
Thank you.
Notice of motion for consideration of subsequent meetings. Any other motions?
I have one, Mayor.
Yeah, Councillor Harder, please.
Thanks. I want to thank Councillor Kavanaugh, who is seconding this notice of motion, and it has to do with waterfalls that are in Andy Hayden Park that if you Google or go on TripAdvisor, you're going to see they're already called Keeley Falls. Tom Keeley was a respected former City of Nepean employee for over 20 years with Parks and Recreation, and upon his retirement, a department superintendent. And whereas he created many new parks on the waterfall in Andrew Hayden Park, located in the western end of the park, where many visitors come as a top destination spot. And whereas his former gave a retirement gift plaque naming the falls Keeley Falls. And whereas upon request by the family to officially name the falls Keeley Falls, and therefore be it resolved that the waterfall located at Andrew Hayden Park, which currently has a sign that says Keeley Falls, be formally recognized. And that would be for the next meeting of council. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Councillor. Notice of intent, avis d'intention, notice of intent from the Auditor General to submit the annual report of the Audit Committee on December 3rd, 2021. Motion to introduce bylaws. Motion portant présentation de règlement, appuyée par conseiller Kavanagh et conseiller Cloutier, s'il vous plaît.
Que le règlement énuméré alors
That the bylaws listed on the agenda under motion to introduce bylaws, 3 readings, be read and passed, with the exception of the following bylaws listed as M and N on the agenda. Item has been deferred to February 9, 2022 council meeting. A bylaw of City of Ottawa to amend Volume 1 and the Scott Street Secondary Plan of Volume 2A of the official plan of the City of Ottawa to redesignate and add site-specific policies for part of the lands known municipally as 1 and 19 Sir John A. Macdonald Parkway. A bylaw of the City of Ottawa to amend a bylaw number 2008-250 to change the zoning of part of the lands known municipally as 1 and 19 Sir John A. Macdonald Parkway.
Adopté. Carried.
Motion carried.
Confirmation bylaw, règlement de ratification, conseiller Kavanagh et conseiller Cloutier, s'il vous plaît.
que le règlement suivant soit lu et
the following bylaw be read and passed to confirm the proceedings of the council meeting of November 24, 2021.
We have one written
Carried.
inquiry from Councillor Brockington, please.
Thank you, Mayor. If the city clerk could please post it, that would be great. I can also read it from my inbox. I'll just start. By law, before a contractor starts excavating, they are obligated to request locates of the underground infrastructure, such as telecoms, gas, hydro, etc. In 2021, the city did not complete a number of projects in Riverward due to delays in the schedule created by locates not being done in time. It's my understanding that in some cases, the locates are 3 months behind. This creates schedule slippage and additional impacts to the community. And I understand the locates are done by a third party and the city has no control over these delays. So my question or public inquiry is directed to the Planning, Infrastructure and Economic Development Department. One, please explain the role and responsibilities of the locator companies to provide locates and the timeline does not delay city projects. 2, what conversations have staff had with the locate companies about the reasons for late locates in order to understand the issue and develop a solution? And 3, with the increase of construction planned for 2022 from 130 million in 2021 to 203 million in 2022 for road projects in particular, how can the city ensure that locate work will not delay city projects? Thank you, Mayor.
Merci. Conseiller Kavanagh et conseiller Cloutier.
Councillor Kavanagh, Councillor Cloutier, motion to adjourn. That the proceedings of the City Council meeting of November 24, 2021 be adjourned.
Adopté. Carried.
Carried.
Thank you. Reminder to members of the media and members of council and the public, the media availability for this council meeting will take place